Herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Folge der SaaS und Software Sales Show. Heute gibt es eine ganz besondere Episode, nämlich wir machen heute ein Interview mit Kevin Ramani. Kevin ist ein absoluter Sales Leader, der sehr, sehr viel Erfahrung hat, was Sales Team Aufbau angeht. Mit ihm habe ich auch damals bei Close zusammengearbeitet. Er war dort der ehemalige Head of Sales und hat mich somit auch mit ausgebildet zu der Salesperson, die ich heute bin und da die Grundlagen auch für mich gelegt. Und da freue ich mich, dass wir heute ihm viele Fragen auch in die Richtung Sales Zielsetzung und Sales Hiring stellen werden. Und deswegen springen wir auch direkt rein ins Interview. Okay, welcome, Kevin Ramani. I'm super excited that we get to pick your sales brain today. For everybody who doesn't know you, a quick intro. You're an absolute Silicon Valley sales leader. A couple of years ago, you helped build Elastic Sales, which was a sales as a service company, which then pivoted into Close. That you as a head of sales grew into a multi-million-dollar company and implemented scalable but also repeatable sales processes. This is also how we got to know each other. You trained and helped me become a high-performing sales rep there, and then helped dozens of companies as a consultant to scale their sales. Now you're with a new fast-growing tech company leading a sales team there. I'm super, super excited that we get to talk about a couple of important questions, namely sales goal setting and sales hiring. Welcome, Kevin, and thanks for making the time today.
It is my absolute pleasure to be here.
Amazing. Okay, Kevin, let's jump right into it. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's start with sales goals hiring. This is something obviously also a lot of my customers come to, and we figured that out, but I would love to get your take on it. With the first very direct question, how do you actually set realistic, yet at the same time motivating sales goals for the company? What is your take on that?
So this is a complex question. And the solution is not straightforward. And that's because when you are building a startup and you're growing it and you're wanting to set goals, you cannot look at the goals that anybody else has set. You can't. There's no value in that because each company is unique in their ability to grow, in their market, in their penetration, the skill set that they have, the maturity, the acceptance from the market. There's so many unique factors that influence what the growth rate is. And then there's sort of a growth rate that's theoretically kind of out there, right? That like the perfect lap for a Formula One car. There is the perfect lap out there. And then the question is the abilities of the people, right? The sales team. Are people pushing past their limits to get to the best that they can be? How do you define what that is? How do you know without actually doing it? So it's kind of challenging. So there are a couple of tools that you can use to design these types of goals. What you want to do is you want to approach it from both ends, from the top down and the bottom up. And then they kind of have to meet somewhere in the middle, and that is that perfect marriage. And so what that means is one approach of it can be, what are you able to do now? Right? So what is a team able to do today, and what the sort of growth trajectory looks like? And it's important not just to say what the numbers are today, but how are they growing? What is that trend line of that growth? And where does that trend line go? And what's typically common for startups is that the growth rate is usually higher in the beginning, and it starts to taper down over time. You could frequently talk to companies or early stage startups, and they'll have 30% month over month growth, 50% month over month growth. Under that sort of 500 to under 1 million annual recurring revenue, you tend to have much, much higher growth numbers. But once you get to closer to that number, it slows down. That's natural. You're not going to grow from 1 million ARR to 1.3 million ARR in a month unless you're doing big enterprise sales or you happen to have this big deal. But then that's not sustainable the month after. So it is not a good goal. So first key is to understand what the trajectory looked like, and is there any trend to the trajectory? If there is a trend to the trajectory, then you can sort of move that up and estimate that it will drop a little bit. So that's one way to look at it, sort of the bottom-up approach. The second part of bottom-up is also to look at pipeline. So if you're doing any kind of enterprise sales, or if you're looking at any existing customers that have bought and you expect them to purchase or upsell, you can actually just start to estimate, like, sort of, you take a little bit of a guess to see which of those customers are going to buy in the coming months, in the coming future, which of those will go and resell or upsell, who could theoretically do this. And then that gives you another line of growth. So that's a second line of growth. The third thing you can influence too is, in just, again, it's all sort of that part of that first wave from the bottom up, is you can look at inbound leads. What's your inbound lead volume like, is if you have any, or what's your outbound lead volume like? What are you able to generate? And so you can get some good guesses around where all those lines are going. And if they're kind of in the general direction, that's one good estimate.
Yeah.
Okay, now you take the top-down approach. So the top-down approach is you want to set certain milestones for growth. Now, if you're a venture-funded company, you usually have fundraising goals. And so you kind of know that if you're a Series Seed company and you want to raise a Series A, you probably know that you need to be around 1 to 2 million annual recurring revenue to raise that Series A. When you have those types of targets, you can sort of work backwards. So when do you want to raise your round of funding? You work backwards to see what level of growth is needed. Mm-hmm. So that's one way to do it. And when you take that sort of the top-down approach and pair it with the bottom-up approach and see how far apart they are. One of the very exciting things you can do in building a company is to see how you can marry the two together, like how you can make the bottom one, so like the reality, where the reality is today and where it actually needs to be, and if there's a gap, what can you do to fill that gap? And there's an exercise the company needs to do as a team to figure out what are things we could do to bridge that gap. And then when you really have exhausted all those exercises and then you realize where you end up, that's where your goal should be. So it needs to be a realistic goal, top down, bottom up, meet in the middle, and try to close that gap, but with a realistic plan that gets you there. And that's how you do it in a nutshell.
Makes sense. So lots of individual things to look at. So now let's say you're a company, you're the founding team, you've done your homework, you did it as best as you can. What are your actual best tips to then actually enable the team and also yourself, because probably you'll also be doing founder-driven sales with the sales team, to actually hit those targets?
Yes. So I'm in the middle of that almost every day. Yeah. We set very aggressive targets here. And in order to go hit those targets, we have to motivate the team to go hit them. Now, in a very simple term, one of the best ways to motivate a team is to simply compensate them as such. So if you've got talented individuals on the team and you've compensated them well, theoretically that should do the job. But in reality, that's not the case. That's not enough. So, but it is a part of it. You have to incentivize them correctly. The larger the team gets, the more the incentives matter more. When they're on the smaller team size, when you're sort of in this startup phase, then you have to think beyond incentives. Incentives matter, but you have to think beyond. So let's say you have a short-term goal. And if there's a short-term goal to be hit, there are certain milestones to be hit. And it's going to take a pretty outsized effort. One incentive plan could just be increasing commissions or giving additional bonuses or setting up little competitions between the sales team to, when they accomplish that, they get that bonus so that whoever wins, is just meaningfully impacting the company's growth. But beyond the incentive structure, there's the second thing, which is belief. And this is where a lot of people fall short, because at the end of the day, we do not have perfect information from the market of what's possible. It's simply where we are right now and what we've been bold enough to attempt. And what I mean by that is, if you want to go sell, if you go sell 10 deals at $10,000 ARR per deal, so you want to close $100,000 in ARR, and that's your target. Well, what if you actually sold the deal for $12,000 and had to only sell 8 of them to get there, right? And can you believe that you can actually sell that for $12,000? What about trying to sell it for $15,000? And you need even fewer deals to get to your goal. Yeah. Is being able to believe that that's even possible. And what a lot of salespeople generally do, most salespeople are not trying to push themselves to maximize the deal value. They're trying to de-risk the deal that they have. So they're trying to say, like, what's the lowest price I can offer this person so that they get the deal and they don't run away. So to make people believe in higher prices, to make people believe in aggressive goals, you have to be involved and you have to go do it. And it's not just you have to say it, you have to go do it. You have to show them it can be done. And when you show them it can be done, then it's going to be done. So one of the things that I do now is I get involved in deals. When my salespeople say, I don't think I can get them to pay this price, I'll say, great, I will negotiate it. And I'll get on a call with the customer and then I'll have that discussion with them. And then I'll pitch that price and I'll show the rep how it's possible. And even if worst case, the customer says no to that price, when we anchor high, we come down from that height, it's at least higher than when they would have started and their own instincts tells them. So you have to be able to show yourself what is possible if you want to push it. And finally, in terms of hitting these targets and motivating the team, you have to also take into account. So there's room for the brilliance. There's room for you to be you to influence people and get them excited. There's compensation, but there's also the process. Sometimes, or not sometimes, actually, fairly often, if you have the good process, you manage a process and let the process manage the people. And so an example of a good sales process could be sales is a numbers driven game. You know that in order to close 10 deals, you're going to need, 20 to 30 good opportunities. In order to have 20 to 30 good opportunities, you're going to need to do, you're going to need to do maybe 100 initial meetings. In order to have 100 initial meetings, you're going to need to reach out to 1,000 people. I'm just making up a funnel here, but it's just a reverse funnel. And you need to know that work is being done. So measuring, setting those KPIs, activity KPIs, and tracking them aggressively and making sure you know at any given time that is the work being done in order to get the output, is enough being put in the funnel so that the output comes in. And you have to add in that little bit extra in the top of the funnel so that even if there's fluctuations, because there is, right? You can never predict which deal is going to close. If I give you 100 leads and tell you which are the 10 deals you'll close, nobody can really tell you. But we know that if I consistently put 100 leads in the system, 10 deals, around 10 to 12, 8 to 12 will close over and over and over again. So we can have certainty at the ends, but we don't have certainty in the middle. So making sure the numbers are being driven the right way is an important part of that process.
So it's really, again, it's more complex than some might think. How do I reach that target? Oh, I just do 10 deals at X amount or whatever. It's really a mix of, as you said, compensation, the right process, motivating the people, but also being a leader and showing what is possible. So I love that. Obviously also because I can back that up, you teaching me and doing those things with me and helping me grow in that journey. So all these things are super important. I'm on the same page with you. It's always a very individual situation, right? But in the end, all these things put together can get the team there. I do have a question though. So let's say we did our sales planning, we have our goals, we're trying to do all these things as good as we can, but then something unexpected comes up. For example, the lead volume is not as good, or we have a phase where suddenly just things are moving more slowly. Reps are starting to get a bit less motivated. What can we do in those phases to like keep motivation up and keep the momentum up or push it on again if it was lower than we expected it to be?
That's a good question, and it's a hard problem at times.
Yeah.
So from the other questions that I've answered in this call so far, is that we talked about setting goals. We talked about making plans in a way that from the bottom up and the top down, they meet somewhere in the middle. And the purpose of doing that is to set goals that are actually realistic, that are achievable, although they're ambitious, right? Because if you only take a goal from one perspective, then it's usually either not ambitious enough or too ambitious and unlikely to be achieved. So that's why you do from the top down, bottom up. So you're in the right band. If you're anywhere around that area, you'll be doing the right things. So it's important to set the goals that are achievable. That's one part of this. If you don't set the goals that are achievable, you're often going to demotivate the team because you set goals that are just not going to be achievable and people are not going to achieve them. So that's a problem. So if you've got then goals that are achievable. The second question that I answered, the last part of that, when we talked about the process, right? Setting numbers, activities, KPIs. These are very important. And as part of what we were talking about in these activities, KPIs, is that you can never know what's going to happen, which of the leads or the activities that you're doing is going to result in the number. You don't know which one, but you know the cumulative effort of that is going to result in the number. And so in the times where things aren't going well, that's where you have to default back to. You have to remind the people to keep doing the right things, right? If you're playing sports and you're a team, it's keep practicing the skills we need to practice. What happens on game day? Some days are very good, some days are bad. But the thing you can control is not what happens on game day. The thing you can control is what you put in and day out in the practice.
Yeah.
And so think of a lot of the sales work, top of the funnel work is the process. And so remind people that, you know, if you have to contact 100 companies in a day and you have to make 100 cold calls and send 50 emails, doing that daily is winning.
Yeah.
As long as you're also measuring the quality of that, right? If I'm a soccer football player and but if I'm practicing a skill that has nothing to do with that, then obviously that's not going to help, right? So there needs to be something tying those things together. You have to believe that those things are actually going to work. But if I'm putting in that work, someday I will win. Yeah. And there are streaks in sales. It's streaks. Sometimes you have good streaks. Sometimes you have bad streaks. The emotional roller coaster in a startup is real. It happens to every company. Every time things are going really, really, really well, we're killing. We're doing the best thing ever. We're crushing it, and then they go really badly. Oh my God, we're going to die. Things aren't going so well. What are we going to do? How are we going to feed the people next month? This is startup life. So you go up, you go down, but you have to keep going. That's the key.
I love that, because obviously we know that from doing sales ourselves, but also I have 2-3 customers where we have some challenges right now. But in the end, it's exactly what you say, like, what are we in control of? And then we focus on executing that regularly, right? So that's a very, very nice summary of you. And it's great to hear that from you as well. And also, we've been through phases like that together as well. So it's great to hear that from your perspective.
Yes, we have.
A couple of other questions that maybe jump to sales team hiring. So maybe a step before all this execution happens, or as you grow, naturally, you will add people to the team if you're doing things right. Directly ask, like, what do you look for when you do sales hiring? What are the things that people need to be aware of and have their alarm bells on or off? And what should you be looking for in a sales rep or hiring a new team member?
I'm asked this question a lot of times, and the advice I always give to founders is that when you're hiring your salespeople, your sales team for the first time, or you're growing your sales team, it's important to understand, first, you should know more about sales if you're going to be correctly able to evaluate people. If you don't know anything about art, how can you evaluate the piece of art in front of you? How can you evaluate the technique? Maybe you can appreciate it on a high level, but how can you evaluate the technique? If you don't know about engineering, how do you know, are you hiring the right engineers? If you need front-end work, but you don't know anything about the difference between front-end, back-end, RevOps, full stack, and you hire the wrong type of engineer, you're going to get the wrong type of results. So you have to increase your competence and understanding on the topic. You increase your knowledge on the topic. And in sales, there's no university on sales. The best university of sales is you do it yourself. This is why it's important to do sales as a founder, as a leader in a company, so that you can understand better what you're dealing with. What are you doing? What good actually looks like? And good is relative in sales. It's relative. In some industries, you go out there and you sell, and it's super easy. You put the product in front of the person and they're just begging you to buy it. In other industries, it's like pulling teeth. It's very difficult. It takes tremendous effort, requires a lot of skill. So it varies from company to company. That means that you need to understand what good actually looks like for your company. What's the benchmark? So once you understand that, the other thing you would learn also is, what is this, a full stack salesperson? Is this a front end salesperson or SDR? Is this a back end salesperson or sales engineer? Is this a, what is this, an account executive, SDR? What is the role? What is required in the role? Is it enterprise, mid-market, B2B, different set of skill sets? Is it heavy on cold calling? So a lot of sort of verbal skill set? Is it heavy on cold emailing? Is it a lot of written skill set? Is it a lot of presentation driven? Is it relationship driven with enterprise deal management and stakeholder management? Is it very technical? What are the components of the sales process? And what you want to do is you actually want to break it down into around 8 to 10 key skills. And examples of those skills is written, verbal, a relationship, research, attention to detail, stakeholder management, negotiation, closing, rejection handling. There are skills all like that, and in some cases, thought leadership, seniority, all of that. You can define around 8 to 10 skills that are unique and specific to your role. Once you've identified that profile, you want to go and look for people that match that profile. And you want to essentially test people to see how well they perform on each one of those things, each one of those questions, or a combination test that can test on multiple of those skills. And then once you put people through that, you're going to have a much more objective way of measuring whether somebody's good or not. Besides just looking at their track record and their history and experience.
Would you recommend doing a trial day, week to see how they actually work and also fit into the team and maybe see if your gut feeling is telling you something? Is that something you would recommend?
I would not, and mainly because this is definitely something we did back in the Elastic sales days. We would just bring people in and they would spend a day with us or a couple of days with us as a trial run. But what I notice is that as you go into more senior requirements of people, then they can't do that. Especially if they're pre-employed, previously employed, or generally they just won't do it. Also, when you have deals that are a little bit longer sales cycle, so once you get beyond the 1 or 2 week sales cycle, or one call closes, when you get into the multiple weeks or multiple months or sometimes years, then that just will not tell you enough. The best thing you can do is I think, you're careful about the people you hire. You're very thorough in your interview process. And you make sure you meet them and you spend time with them. And if they are to come in and spend half a day, it's not half a day doing sales, but half a day spending time with you, maybe presenting to you. Maybe you could do mock sales with them. Have them come and present their existing product, whatever they've sold before, something they're comfortable. Let them present it, pitch them. Let them talk about how they would set up strategy for you, or how they would actually go about selling. Show them sales challenges you have and see how they would solve those problems. You get a better sense of who they are. But at the end of the day, you're going to be wrong. And so your best thing is you hire slow, but you fire fast. Once within the first couple of weeks after the person's joined, you'll know, you have an instinct for this. And most people who don't let go of bad people ignore their instincts. If you have doubts that the person's going to work out, don't doubt your doubts. Listen to your doubts and lean into them. Let those people go. So every time I know people who've ignored their doubts, who said, maybe I'm being too harsh, or maybe this person needs more training from me, or maybe person needs this or that. 99% of the time it doesn't work out, and it's just more time and energy wasted. So hire fast.
Hire fast, but also fire fast if you see it's not working out.
Sorry, I apologize. I meant to say hire slow, hire thoughtfully, but fire fast.
Exactly. No, makes sense. One last question, Kevin. So how can tech and SaaS companies these days actually make sure that they also attract the kind of people they want in their sales teams? Is there any magic blueprint? What can they do? Is it literally do your work when hiring, and if it doesn't work out, fire fast?
Yes, at the end of the day, I think it's that. I think that's the number one thing. If we were going to dig a little deeper, you have a thoughtful sales process. You have to put lots of candidates through that, but in many ways, finding great candidates is not a lot of times it's not about inbound. The best candidates are usually employed already. So you have to go find them. You have to headhunt them. You have to bring them in. When you bring them in, you put them through the process. You bring people into the hiring process in your organization that have different perspectives, that have different sets of critical skill sets or critical thinking skill sets. So you want to bring that person that's usually the skeptic in the room. You want to bring the person who's the optimist. You want to get all those opinions in the room of that person, so they can get a sense of what are you getting into. And then once you do decide to hire somebody and bring them in, make sure in the first few weeks you're spending a meaningful amount of time with them. But if they're not meeting expectations and they've been clearly communicated, I think you should just make sure that you make the decision to let them go. The fastest I've ever let somebody go was 1 week after they joined. In 1 week, I knew it was not going to work out. And the slowest I've let somebody go is 6 months. And every time I look back and I said, I wasted 6 months. I knew right away. I knew within month 1 that this person isn't going to work out. So a couple of weeks, maximum 1 month is really all you take, because all that needs to be taken, because you know how they're interacting with the team. You know, are they getting it or not? And they're not getting it. You might say, well, listen, my sales cycle is 3 months long. So how can I let go of somebody if they haven't had a chance to close a deal? Well, you can know, because how are they creating proper pipeline? Are they understanding your product? Are they able to articulate its value proposition to others in the team? Are they engaged with the team? Are they learning from people? All those questions are going to tell you whether they're going to succeed or not. And the chance that you're wrong is usually so low that it's not worth doubting yourself. Just make the call, let them go, and move on. And what happens is, over time, you hire, you let go, and you hire, and eventually you collect great people. And the more great people you have, they will know other great people, and you get referrals and bring people in that way.
So to sum that last question up, it's basically, after a month, you should have, 1, enough facts, but also 2, a very good gut feeling if this is working out or not. Don't drag it out longer than that, is your experience. Perfect.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Kevin, thank you so much for all this super valuable insight. For everybody here watching, this is great value. As someone who has built numerous sales teams and has a lot of sales leads, also experience in the real world, selling daily yourself. How can people get in touch with you? How can people find out more about you?
Yes, good question. So people can get in touch with me on my email is probably the best. So my email is email@kevinramani.com. You can also go to kevinramani.com, my website, and probably just get my contact information from there. And as best as I can, I'll offer my help.
Yeah, we'll put that down below under this episode of the SaaS Sales Show. Kevin, thank you so much for your time. And really, really appreciate you taking this time, and it was a great chat and very valuable. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Ich hoffe, dir hat das Interview gefallen und du konntest dir da schon viele Nuggets rausziehen und hattest vor allem auch so viel Spaß wie ich hoffentlich bei diesem Interview. Solltest du neu auf diesem Kanal sein, erstmal diesen Kanal hier unbedingt abonnieren. Unten findest du dann auch die Kontaktdaten zu Kevin. Solltest du mit deinem Team aufs nächste Sales-Level kommen möchten, mit Strategien und Techniken angepasst auf den deutschsprachigen Raum, dann schau jetzt unbedingt auf www.nodaleconsulting.com, weil die Themen, die wir jetzt besprochen haben, sind genau Themen, mit denen ich deutschsprachige Teams im SaaS-Sales berate, betreue und eben auch Themen wie Motivation, richtiges Training, die richtigen Techniken da den Teilnehmern näher bringe. Also sollte das für dich interessant sein, dann unbedingt auf www.nodaleconsulting.com schauen, dann können wir uns auch ein kostenloses Erstgespräch ausmachen und wenn alles passt, auch eine Strategieberatung, wo wir uns deine Situation ganz genau ansehen, egal ob es dein Sales Team Hiring ist, die Compensation oder auch zum Beispiel der aktuelle Stand der Motivation und wie wir die Sales-Ziele wirklich auch erreichen können. Bei dir, da schauen wir uns alles an, da nehme ich mir gerne Zeit dafür, aber der erste Schritt, schau mal auf die Website nodaleconsulting.com und ich würde mich sehr freuen, wenn wir dann bald persönlich sprechen. Ciao und bis zur nächsten Folge, dein Alberto.